We are living in strange times. Perhaps more than ever before in our lifetimes, it is critically important that we stay connected to the divine, our souls, and to keep our energetic vibrations high. That can be incredibly hard to do in the face of the 24-hour news cycle, social media, and personal and relational division. But it is possible to raise your frequency in order to support and manifest good in your life and in the world. The Higher Vibrations meditation class with Cynthia Alice Anderson will meet online in June on Wednesday evenings. Higher Vibrations will focus on the transformation of low vibes, opening to peace, finding higher vibrations, and will give practical application for your life. You can drop in for a single Higher Vibrations class for just $15 or enroll in the entire class for the discounted rate of $45. Seating is limited and the Higher Vibration class starts soon, so enroll today at cynthiaaliceanderson.com/higher vibrations. Natural Awakenings Magazine and Zen Living Realty present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 104, The Journey Upward. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to The Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm the host and I'm so happy to be recording today from my home studio. And I'm here in the studio with my producer.
Hello everybody, this is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 104 of The Authentic Spiritual Journey. As always, I hope you are doing well. I hope you and your loved ones are safe and healthy as we still continue to navigate the COVID and what that's going to look like, and we're remote again, and just playing it nice and safe.
Right, and I think that's going to be where we are, Dave. I mean, I think that's where everybody is. You know, we're back and forth and trying to do the responsible things, staying at home when we have to, and going out only when we have to. And because I just traveled, even I once again ordered lunch to be delivered because, I was gone, didn't have a lot in the house. So it was like, well, I probably should not be going out right now. I just got back and I was in a hospital setting. Of course, we were all wearing masks and, all that nature. But yeah, we're being careful. So I hope you are out there that are listening. We want that for you. We hope that for you. And in our spiritual walk, we just feel it's what we need to do.
Yeah. Today, just this morning, I went to the grocery store and I put gas in my car for the first time since March.
Wow. That is even better than me. I think I've put it in once.
Yeah, because all I do is literally drive to the grocery store and back. And that March, I filled it up right before the lockdown because I was like, all right, back when gas was still over $2. And so that was really literally since March.
Right. Well, I loved how much it cost me $20 to fill up my tank. And that hasn't happened since I was a teenager, if I'm being honest.
Especially if you went back, back to your truck and all of that.
Oh, the truck.
Oh, my gosh.
The truck was $60 to fill up.
Oh, man.
Yeah, ridiculous.
It did look great, though.
But hey, it was cool. It was a cool truck.
That was a cool truck. That was a very cool truck.
So, and I would just want to do a shout out to all of our listeners. Sometimes we do it to certain areas, but I know people are listening from all around the country and around the world, and we just acknowledge you as a part of our audience. And again, we thank you for sharing. We thank you for supporting the channel, not only by listening, but by your financial gifts, by going on to YouTube and watching on our YouTube channel as well. I used to say, I'm stopping myself from saying, I used to say I'm a terrible self-promoter. But the truth is, I love what I do, and I love when it gets shared. So we just thank you in advance.
Yeah, and I want to thank the listeners who have reached out to some of the guests. Like I've followed up with some of our guests that we've had, and they've gotten clients or business from listeners of the show. And I want to say thank you so much. This is exactly why it's important to bring people in who are spiritually minded and spiritually focused
Mhm.
so that you can be aware of them. And obviously, to encourage you and to just spread love. But I just wanted to thank you. If you've reached out to whether it's Zen Living or Monique or anybody,
Mhm.
uh, anybody we've had on the show, if you've gone and listened to Denise's music on Spotify, or if
Mhm.
you've bought a John Stringer record or Daniel Namod or any of the guests we've had, thank you so much for supporting them, because by supporting them, you're supporting us as well.
Yes, and John has a great project coming out. I don't know how many people know about it yet, so
Hmm.
well, probably by the time this airs, it'll be out,
Yeah.
is my guess, but I was happy to be a part of that video project as well. So anyway, we're welcoming you into the show. We do appreciate all your support, always. And especially during this time, because I feel very strongly that what's going to get us all through this time is hanging on to our spiritual journey, for dear life, because there is so much change and there is so much upheaval. Um, and we want to get to that today. We want to really speak about that, but I didn't want to get any further before I just said thank you, you know, for
Hmm.
supporting us, for the supporting the show, and especially our sponsors that have given big to make sure that we stay on the air. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and Natural Awakenings, who's now been a long time sponsor, putting us in their magazine, and if you're listening to us, uh, after having seen our ad in Natural Awakenings, thank you so much,
Hmm.
and show them a little love. Go, patronize. Is that
Right.
right?
Well, there's a lot of
Yeah.
great people that advertise in Natural Awakenings magazine,
Hmm.
and it does a lot to bring healthcare and kind of new solutions to interesting health issues.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful resource. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful resource magazine for
Absolutely.
detoxing, all those kinds of things. So we like to be considered one in an aspect of one of the healing modalities. I often call it we're part of the four energetic bodies, right? The mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. So obviously we're part of the spiritual body, but the things we teach here on the channel uh, interact and collaborate, for lack of a better word, with all the other energy bodies to create a healthy individual. Like you can have good thoughts, but if you don't have a spiritual life and you're not eating well, those thoughts are only going to take you so far because the other energy bodies are out of alignment. So I've been learning even more about that over the last couple of years, and we often think about our spiritual life as separate, and more what I'm seeing is whatever we do spiritually is just life. And so it's not like, well, I live my life and then I do the spiritual stuff over here. The idea of the whole show, we often say, is to reawaken consciousness to love, acceptance, and peace. Well, you can hear by me saying that doesn't mean, well, you go over here, okay, I'm going to be loving over here, but then I'm going to be a jackass over here. you know, Reawaken consciousness. In other words, I want to live from a place of love, acceptance, and peace. And we know we're all a work in progress, ourselves included, right? We share our journey with you. These are spiritual conversations among friends, and today is no exception. Our title today is Journey Upward. It maybe even should be The Journey Upward. But the journey upward is about just that we right now are in a process of awakening. And we've talked a lot about it. Spiritual people have talked a lot about it. I saw recently Deepak Chopra talk about it, although we were talking about it before Deepak. And there is a journey upward. And I want to pause as I say, we are in a journey upward. Because if you only look at the news, it would look as if the journey is a downward, that we're spiraling downward, actually. And I want to talk about what I see as aspects of the journey and how they're, in fact, a necessary and even difficult part of the journey upward. So, what we're seeing now, and I've spoken a little bit about this, and I've written about it a little bit for CCU Orlando, but what we're seeing now in terms of the uh, Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, all of these movements are about bringing to consciousness things that have been in the shadows. And many of you know I am from the South, and I just returned from an emergency trip there to help a little bit, just to make sure my mom was receiving the right care.
Mm.
And my siblings do a wonderful job, but it's just, your mom is sick, you got to go.
Yeah.
And I was reminded as I was driving into this certain town where my family lives. Of course, there's a sign with the Confederate flag that says "Join soldiers now." And it's been there. I mean, it's been there, but it's still there, and the number's still good. And it was a reminder of how unveiled the racism has always been in that part of the South. Or I say always. When I was 6 years old, the first parade I saw was a parade of the KKK.
Mm.
And I remember the sick feeling it gave me in my stomach when I saw it. 6 years old, coming out of the public library. So, so also in the South, there is rampant uh, abuse and childhood sexual abuse. I don't care what anybody says. It is a terrible environment, and it happens a lot in all socioeconomic situations. It's not, I don't, I would love to know what the figures actually are, if it's different, what the differences might be. But I can tell you from people I've known and people I grew up with, the racism and the sexual violence seems to know no bounds in terms of socioeconomic status. So why am I starting with this? This sounds like a downer. Well, what's interesting about, especially about Georgia, is that the race, like I say, it's never been hidden. But in many other parts of the country, there was this idea that oh, we don't have a racist problem anymore, therefore let's just move on with life. But because all over the country now it's rising to the surface as a problem, it's going to finally be dealt with. That's exactly what happened with the Me Too movement, and I spoke about it then as well. That and I spoke about it a few shows ago, that we need more corporate CEOs who are going to make such a safe work environment that the Me Too movement becomes a thing of the past, because it's no longer needed, because people in power actually care about it.
Mm-hmm.
So even though from the standard observer kind of objective, it looks as if, well, everybody's here and everybody's mad over here and everybody's mad over here. And that is an aspect of it. But ultimately, what it's doing is waking people up to what's happening so that it can be healed. We cannot heal it if we don't know it's there. We cannot heal it if we don't know it's there. And so this is the journey upward. Once we know it's there, now we can begin to heal. So let me just tell you, there's three aspects that I see, and these are going to sound remarkably unspiritual. And the first thing that starts to happen is, whatever viewpoint you're holding, you start to feel squeezed in that point. In other words, you start to go, maybe this isn't working after all. So this is what happens on the spiritual journey. I know, because I just went through this, where I've been through it many times. When there's really a deep situation like this, it's often called the dark night of the soul. But what I'm speaking of is normal life situations that, for whatever reason are not working. And you start to feel squeezed. It's like everywhere you turn, something isn't working. Something's not working at your job. Something's not satisfying you in your personal life. Something is happening economically to everybody. Health wise, everybody's scared. So we're in such a time right now that everybody is feeling kind of squeezed. And so we feel that on a real personal level, on the what we often call the individual or the micro level, and we're also seeing that on the macro level, on the level of the larger community, and in fact, even our country and even the world. Clearly, there are old things dying away. But the process, I kind of wanted to slow it down because it can be really off-putting. It can be really upsetting. So the first point, as I'm thinking of it, is how I feel is squeezed. That everywhere I turn, I can't do what I normally do. And so some of us are feeling that in our spiritual process right now. Some of that are feeling that in an economic process. And some of us are just feeling it on our journey in general because what we used to do, we can't do. What we where we used to be able to go, we can't go. Even the way we used to be able to think and speak, we can't speak. People are feeling like, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want to be as woke as
Mhm.
I can be. I want to be aware. I want to be spiritual. I want to be supportive of others. But then I don't even know what I'm doing. So this is where I think we are right now. We're feeling kind of squeezed. Does that term make sense to you, Dave?
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. Especially, you were saying, you don't want to say the wrong thing. You want to be really sensitive to it, and that's how. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. Yeah.
Well, I was just in a situation where I'd had a kind of a tough meeting. Um, And I certainly had a part in that. Anytime you go into a meeting tired and maybe not quite as centered as you'd like to be, it's easy to get a little triggered, or it's easy to not be as patient, and things like that. So I was in a situation a few weeks ago where that's how it felt. It was like, okay, boy, that meeting did not go well. Let's see. Here's a bill I was not expecting. Let's see. Here's a health challenge of somebody I love dearly.
Mm.
Let's see. The house deal fell through. It's like, okay, all right. So I'm feeling a little squeezed at the moment. So it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. Just
what the
piled on.
yeah, so what the heck, So so psychologically, I've learned when you're feeling that and you're trying to move into new behaviors, right? So first we feel the squeeze, and then we're like, okay, like this new behavior tries to kind of like eke out. Well, as that new behavior is starting, this new consciousness starts coming forward, it's like it perturbs the whole thing. I've used this word on the show before. I think I've been using it in classes, and people laugh at the word because the word is perturbation. When something is perturbed, and there is a theory in quantum mechanics called the perturbation theory, by the way.
Yeah.
So the word perturbation comes from the Latin turba, or turbe, which means disturbance. And so um, anytime we move into a new behavior in any kind, in any area, it perturbs what we're normally like operating in a normal orbit. And so that's the original theory was based the general uh, approach is thinking about the interaction between the planets and the sun. Anyway, so for us, you know, like right now we're trying to be more aware. So as we're more aware, things we used to say, we're
Mhm.
not saying. Things we used to think, we're looking at our thoughts. And people we used to talk to, we're having new conversations. And what I've noticed is that wants to perturb everything. It's, in other words, there's a disturbance. This side's up, this side's down. It's like when you have like a big quilt in the washing machine, and you hear it going thump 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 thump, and that is no bueno. Uh, that's what happens. That's what happens. The whole situation is perturbed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kinda like, a musician at the beginning of a concert hits a wrong note,
Yes.
and then suddenly, a piece of music that they've played
Mhm,
flawlessly is now riddled with error after error
mhm,
because that one little thing goes
mhm.
sideways and it has this almost cascading effect. This little bit of fear gets in there, and then you're like, "Oh, man, why did I mess up?" And in the middle of a live performance, you start psychoanalyzing why you made that mistake, and then you're like, "Oh, did I wear the wrong underwear today?" And
Alright,
all of
start
these
doing
other
that.
things.
Start doing that anxiety thing,
Yeah,
picking everything
exactly.
apart, right. So what we're in right now as a culture is a gigantic perturbed state. And so it's happening with us on the individual level though too, which is why it's happening on the larger level. So the greater community is always a reflection, of what's going on internally. But the good news is there has to be this disturbance. Everything has to get perturbed for it to
Mhm.
come back into balance.
That's right, because it can't stay the way it was.
It cannot stay the way it was. If we were in church, I'd say with me, it cannot stay the way it was. Together, it cannot
It
stay
cannot
the
stay
way it
the way
was.
it
Cannot
was.
stay the way it was. Because the way it was isn't even how it was. It was denial of what was actually happening.
That is so true. It's this kind of dream dreamlike version,
Mhm.
this
It's a
fantasy
total fantasy.
of what we
Mhm,
think or what we
mhm,
thought was normal or how things were, which is why when I hear a phrase like "Make America Great Again,"
mhm.
it makes me think, okay, when are you saying, and you pick any point in time, and you can say there are millions of people who this period of time wasn't great for. So if it's a mid Cold War, pre Apollo era America, the 50s, no. So you're telling me like women couldn't get jobs, and never mind, every minority in the country was a
Exactly.
second class citizen, and that's what's great. And so I think that's that delusion,
Yes.
denial you said. That's
Well, it
absolutely
is.
what
It's
that is.
delusional. It's delusional. The thinking is delusional, and it's pretending that something was there that was there that was that something that was there that was not there, in terms of a beingness, in terms of consciousness, in terms of a reality. And so, coming and waking up is very painful. And have you ever woken up like in the middle of the night, just all of a sudden you wake up and you go like this?
Oh yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
People are waking up and going, "Oh my God." So it takes a little bit for that to settle. So
Hmm.
we're in that state right now, that little bit of a disturbance, and it's not little, it's global. So we want to talk more about it, but as we go into the break, just think about that. I want you to be thinking about, if I've been feeling a little squeeze and if things seem out of balance, you know what? They are. But
That's right.
but I want you to hold on to, even in the break, that it means things are getting better. So we're on your side and we're lifting you up, and we'll be back right after these brief messages. Thank you.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, Natural Awakenings Magazine of Central Florida, Greater Orlando. Each month, Natural Awakenings magazines across the country take a practical look at the latest natural approaches to nutrition, fitness, creative expression, personal growth, and sustainable living. Natural Awakenings magazine is a free publication and is available in selected stores, health and education centers, healing centers, public libraries, and wherever free publications are located. You could learn more, including advertising opportunities for your business, by calling 407 628 0705. We'd also like to extend our special thanks to Zen Living Realty. Zen Living Realty's mission is to mindfully serve, connect, and positively impact their customers, partners, and community through their Zen approach to real estate. Their vision is to be the most trusted real estate brokerage in the Central Florida area. You can reach Zen Living Realty at zenlivingrealty.com or call 407 800 2717. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Welcome back. We're glad you're with us. And I can it's so interesting that I have to record these so far in advance. because when they play later, it's amazing how spirit is at work in the creation of these themes. Um, and I, what I started to say is, even though you're going to hear this weeks later, I feel into the energy of where you're going to be listening to it, and I can feel you thinking about it. I can feel you going, yeah, that's kind of what's happening. And the reason we do shows like this, sometimes I have a specific teaching. It's like, okay, this is my class. Like we did unexpected income a couple weeks, and it's something I love to talk about. But sometimes it just has to be about the journey itself, because it can feel like we're doing it wrong. And I don't know about you all, but that can be a trigger for me. I never want to do it wrong. I don't know anybody who does. Yeah, let's do it wrong and try to feel good about it. No, no, nobody wants to do it wrong. So I want to give you these tools to be able to recognize the pattern of what the journey is. And we have the idea, again, the delusion. We're caught in the delusion that when we're on the spiritual journey, and that when we're seriously on the spiritual journey, that this means life is going to be perfect. It means there's going to be no pain. It means we're going to go into this, euphoric kind of utopian existence. And there's this old saying in Buddhism. What did you do before enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. What did you do after enlightenment? Well, chop wood, carry water. So there's just life on life's terms. And the reason we study spiritual principle is so we can have a spiritual context for what's going on. This context does include, as I mentioned earlier, all four of the bodies. There's the emotional body, the mental body, the physical body, and the spiritual body. So all these are working together, because we're not divided into sections. You can't just take one out and work on it and put it back in. Unfortunately, it's not like a computer. We can't just install brand new hardware. Although you can install new hips and knees and
Right.
stuff. So we're
Hearts
moving
and
that direction.
stuff.
But so we are one whole being. So when we're impacted on the physical level, when we're impacted on the mental level, it's all the same steps, right? So the journey upward, as I'm speaking of today, is giving you some awarenesses around. It's basically, what is the archetype of the journey? What can I expect knowing I'm on a journey upward? Well, one thing you can expect is having to move out of your comfort zone, which is what I said in the first half about feeling squeezed. You feel squeezed because what you used to do does not work anymore. You feel squeezed because the old is passing away, and as a matter of fact, you're actually the one doing the squeezing. So I want to say that sometimes we feel like, man, this is like a 2x4 from the universe. Well, it feels that way, but all the universe can do is reflect our intention and our consciousness, back to us. So if I'm like growing, if I'm like expanding, well, I look here and there's something different. I look over here and there's something different. I have to come up with a new idea. So that new idea is what creates the disturbance for a bit. And then I regain my balance. And that would really be the third step, is that balance does return. Now, we haven't seen that yet in the larger um, uh, public culture, and we're only going to see it in the larger public culture when it's known in every heart, mind, and body and soul of the individual. The culture, the larger culture, is only a reflection of our process. So when we think about this spiritually, it often seems like um, even the spiritual practices we used to do didn't work. That every time we sit down to do our process, we say, man, this feels old. What am I supposed to do? So what I want to encourage you in is, if you're feeling this squeezed and you're feeling this disturbance, as hard as it might be at the time, I want you to bless it, because it means the new is coming forward and balance will return. But when the disturbance is going on, it does not feel like it. When the disturbance is going on, it gets all of our attention. When the disturbance is going on, we think that's all that's happening. And so balance returns when out of that disturbance, we can go, wait a minute, what is happening? And so that's what I was able to do recently. I went to one of my favorite places in Georgia, and because I was feeling very squeezed and I was feeling perturbed, and why? Because the things I was normally doing, were not working. Um, so I went and did some really deep spiritual work, and what was so beautiful is I got to do it in this really peaceful, beautiful area outside where there's just waterfall that goes down the rocks, and uh, it's this place in the woods, and big rocks everywhere. I was sitting on a big rock, and the creek was running down, in front of me. And I sat there and I journaled and I journaled all those feelings of frustration, of anxiousness, of a disappointment, of even hopes and dreams. I just journaled and journaled and journaled. And I had no time limit. I thought if I'm here 30 minutes or 3 hours, I'm good. I've got water, I've got snacks, I am not moving. So I sat there and sat there and sat there. And then after I did all the journaling, I was able to do a big meditation and release. And I just Well, how I did it outside this time was, I had brought some matches with me because I knew I was gonna be on these stones. I was right by the water. So I went up to the highest point that I could hike to on the waterfall. Since I was alone, I had to be very careful. And there's a big rock that overlooks and looks down the waterfall. And I sat up there. I turned my back where it was really, really calm, and I burned all of that. And it was so beautiful to just give that back to the universe, to let the smoke and the fire just transform it. And because I was there in the water, I was able to wash my face with that ice cold creek water
Mm.
and just feel really cleansed and refreshed. And, it probably only took about an hour and a half, like start to finish total. But from how I sat down to how I stood up, how I felt when I stood up was like two different people. It was like, "Oh, yes, I remember this. I remember this feeling of balance." And because I was there on the rocks, and because it was beautiful weather, and because I'd rinsed my face in this cool, it was like everything I felt was getting washed away. I'd burned my pages, and that, went up, and the ashes evaporated everywhere. It was beautiful. And the balance just kind of magically, felt like magically returned. So why did the balance return? Because rather than trying to change this disturbance from the outside and force a change, I started taking it apart piece by piece and seeing what needed my attention, what needed to be released, what needed to be loved inside of me, what needed to be really considered. It's like, okay, I feel very strongly about this. What is this in me? And to just really honor that. So uh I didn't try to control the outcome, even though of course I was hoping when I was done with the journaling I would feel better. But I realized I couldn't force my psyche into being a certain place it was. I couldn't force my soul into being in balance. I had to just take each step at a time, each feeling, kind of unwrap it and go, wow, I'm really angry. What is this about? I feel really undervalued. What is this about? Am I undervaluing myself? Probably,
Mm.
So so the balance returned seemingly without a lot of effort. But was there effort? Of course, there was a great deal of spiritual effort. But you can't get to balance by forcing an outcome. You can't get to balance by forcing an outcome.
Yeah, that's a tough one. In today's environment, where people that disagree with you,
Mhm.
you're like you're so colossally wrong on this that you just want to force them to see your point of view. You want people to all agree, that racism bad, right? And it seems like such a no-brainer, but there are
Yes.
some people that aren't. And so forcing, yeah, that's not going to promote change in our society, in our
It never
universe,
will.
and
You can't force it. What you can do is keep lifting it up, and stay as integrous as possible
mhm,
with your process.
yeah,
And I did have a situation, more than one in just a few days when I was in Georgia recently to be able to speak my mind, and then other times I didn't because it was not the right time. I mean, boy, wisdom really is it comes in handy in these things because I'm not afraid to speak my mind. I'm not afraid to make a stand. But I was very aware of this process I'm speaking of because I was in the middle of it. Uh, one of the situations happened right after the journal, like a few hours after the journaling, and something was said, and there was this energy that started to get created between two people. And I said to myself, I want to jump in here, but I'm going to perturb this unnecessarily and accomplish nothing. What's good is that they're talking about it.
mm,
So I'm going to leave it be and let it have its own life. And because nobody jumped in, it died. It didn't build energy.
right,
And I think had I come in to, you know, fight it, to resist, that would have created the disturbance, you know, and and I considered it. And I don't know if it was because I was exhausted spiritually or a moment of wisdom came through, or maybe both.
maybe the both.
But as I watched it, I said, "This is not for me. I don't think this is for me." And so I listened real close, and Spirit said, "No." So
Mm,
I just checked in. Spirit said, "No." Spirit said, "No." So I want to go back a little bit because when the disturbance is happening, several things go on. We, all of us, typically, when there's a disturbance outwardly, we start to try to control the smallest thing so we can feel better. Control something for God's sakes, because I got no control out here.
right.
You know, some of us go to anxiety, some of us go to anger. It depends on uh, you know, what our coping strategy was as a youngster is usually what we go back to. It's like we're pulled back to our family of origin role like by a rubber band. As soon as a trauma happens, it reminds us we go and we go all the way back, and it's like, no.
You just regress into
Yeah,
your
yeah, we regress like instantly. And we get this, complex reaction, and which is actually where the word complex comes from in psychology, right?
mm,
So when Jung was doing his testing with patients, uh, and he would say a word, that association game, he would say mother, and they should say
father,
sister,
brother.
right? But if there was a longer time, it was it was it was a complex reaction because it took longer to answer. And if somebody said to me teacher, and I said door, that would be a strange association, but I wouldn't have said it right away. Usually teacher, school, you know.
Hmm.
So that's how the word complex got there. Some trauma happened, and that's why the reaction is complex. So in adulthood, when some a trauma happens, we're complexed right back to that moment. But that's why it's called a complex, because there's a trauma attached to that
Right.
moment. So to watch this and to be an observer of yourself takes a lot of spiritual discipline. It's very difficult to do, but also very possible. Because if you can catch it when you're rolling into it, you can rise up out of it. But what we most of us do is we go into it, we get all, you know, hinky and weird, and then we go, "Oh, wait a minute." "Oh, wait a minute." And so we try to back up. So the good news is spirit gives us infinite chances, it seems. Thank you, God, that I get more chances. But I want you to be aware that this is a normal reaction to a disturbance because it feels out of control. So a lot of us are in that right now because there is so much change. So I just hope that there can be a lot of forgiveness among friends, colleagues, and family members, because people are doing, in general, in my world, are doing the best they can.
Yeah.
So when there's a disturbance, when there's a perturbation, we want to, as much as possible, rise up and out so that we can be objective and see what's happening, and then do the work, whatever needs to be done, so that the balance can return. Because we can't go through life constantly perturbed. That
Right.
turns into high blood pressure, heart issues,
Ulcers.
ulcers, exactly, all those
And
things.
yeah, and just a general, just kind of malaise about humanity
Mhm.
itself.
Yes. Yes, I don't judge people who don't have a spiritual life. I just have no idea how they do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So yeah, the um, balance and health is our natural state. So we do all these things to move back into balance. So, um, I spoke of journaling, which involved journaling feelings. It involved forgiveness. It involved release. It also involved loving myself in the midst of my reactions. So, friends, if you don't know yet what most supports you, that would be a wonderful project to assign yourself in your spiritual time, to think about, man, when I get real triggered or when there is this big disturbance in my life, how do I handle it? Do I call everybody I know and, just make it worse by giving it all this energy? Or do I seek out a trusted counselor and maybe a friend? And then I take these reflections back and then move forward. That's kind of my approach. Is I enjoy dynamic discourse, but I've also learned that if I talk about something too much, it will give it too much negative energy. So think about what you need to do so that the balance can return to your life and to your world,
Hmm.
because you can't make good decisions when you're always in this heightened state of anxiety. We want to be in a state of spiritual awareness, not a heightened state of anxiety and disturbance. And this is especially important right now because, again, on the community, the state level, and even national, and even the world right now is in this state. So it's going to be natural to be almost feel pulled into this lower energy. So I want to encourage you to really look deeply within yourself to see how that's happening so that you can help those things rise to the surface for your own healing, so that you can help bring balance to the greater community and even the world. We love to say, and we often say, we are one. And never has it been more important that we remember that. We remember it on the level of humanity, wanting equality for all of us. We've always been about that on this show and in our lives, both Dave and myself. So, and we're still growing in that,
Hmm.
both of us. I would, not that I'm speaking for you, but just
No,
as
no,
your
you're right.
friend, I would say I know because you've told me, and I know because of conversations I've had recently. We're still growing too.
Hmm.
We're still growing. But the more we grow and the more conscious we become, the more we are of support to everyone on planet Earth. And friends, we're going to make mistakes. There's going to be times where we get mad. There's going to be times where we lose our cool. But what I want you to remember is everything that's happening is part of the journey upward. This energy has to come up so that it can be healed and we can all rise up together. This is the idea. Everything that's happening right now is divinely ordained to get us to our next state of awareness. So I want to encourage you to do the work, to really honor where you are right now, honor the journey, and keep journeying upward with us, because we need you with us. We need you with us on the journey. So we bless you. We thank you for joining us today. And as always, we hold you in prayer for God's highest and best in your life. Many blessings, dear friend.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey, presented by Natural Awakenings Magazine and Zen Living Realty. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is also made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, Arlene Meyer, Kathy and Terry, Marcia Mott, Nora Miles, Diana Cox, Leslie Williams, Susanna Garcia, Shayla Mount, Dorothy Moore, Aggie Payton, Taryn Tucker, and Anna Evans. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2020 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.